Some gifts are quickly forgotten.
Oh, another candle.
Others can last a lifetime, like a lifetime basketball hoop system. Some gifts can break your heart. Others break records, like an Easton Mako torque bat, and strengthen the heart, like a Fitbit Charge HR. Get the athletes in your life a gift that matters from Dick's Sporting Goods. Hurry into Dick's and save 25% on select Nike apparel and footwear. Every holiday season starts at Dick's.
From me to you.
Houston has an offense that's among the most explosive in the nation. Florida State's defense ranks 5th in points allowed. They go head-to-head in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, 11:30 Eastern New Year's Eve on ESPN Radio.
The topics are hot. The discussion is heated. The First Take podcast starts now.
Coming up on the pod, we'll react to Odell Beckham's suspension, plus Stephen A's interview with Will Smith. How will this new movie, Concussion, impact the NFL? And how far can Kirk Cousins take Washington this season? That and so much more coming up on the podcast.
You go at somebody maliciously like that and go head hunt. If you want that kind of game, I mean, that's outside of the game. That's not in the rule book anymore. We can go there. I don't think you want that to happen. That's two-faced.
I'll be honest with you. I hope he learns exactly what should be learned, that there is no place in this game for these personal battles.
We're competing. You know, you're a competitor, I'm a competitor. We're always going to go at it. Anybody who's played sports, you know, you're competitive. You're going to go as hard as you can.
Oh, good morning. Welcome into a very special edition of First Take on a Tuesday. Stephen A sits down with Will Smith to discuss his new movie, Concussion. Looking forward to that interview. We appreciate you joining us. Skip Bayless, Molly Karam here in Bristol. Stephen A joining us from New York. Gentlemen, how we doing?
What up, what up, what up? How y'all doing? Good morning.
Good morning.
I am looking forward to your Will Smith interview, but I was thinking last night of all the people that have interviewed Will last 48 hours, you might be the only person to interview him who's actually bigger than Will Smith.
Oh, you're right.
It just occurred to me. I'm right about that.
Blockbuster right here.
Yes.
You know what? Come talk to me when I get $20 million for doing this show, like he gets $20 million per film. Come talk to me then.
From what I read, I think it might be in that ballpark.
Right?
Yeah.
I heard Will was nervous.
Once again, erroneous information.
You can't believe what you read? Yeah.
You can't believe what you read.
We have an even bigger story than the movie Concussion, though, that we need to get into right now. Odell Beckham Jr. has been suspended one game for his conduct in Sunday's loss to the Panthers. One Giants source told ESPN's Ian O'Connor the receiver was unnerved by the fact that one Panther carried a baseball bat onto the field during warm-ups, a bat that found its way into cornerback Josh Norman's hand. The source also said that Giants players overheard Carolina players direct at least 2 gay slurs at Beckham, setting the confrontation tone there. Panthers corner Bené Benwickery, who's out for the season, tweeted the following about the bat. Coaches and players in every sport use objects as symbols of motivation. The bat is a symbol. Stephen A., now that more details have been released regarding this situation, do you have any sympathy for Beckham?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as sympathy because, again, I believe that the suspension was a complete byproduct of the hit, the helmet-to-helmet hit that Odell Beckham Jr. laid on Josh Norman, essentially just really going head hunting, and that's really what it comes down to for me. Anything else that transpired, as far as I'm concerned, is all a part of the game, a lot of trash talking that was going on, et cetera, et cetera. And I will tell you, in fairness to Odell Beckham Jr., I have not spoken to him. I don't know him. I don't know his side. But I have spoken to Josh Norman on several occasions over the last 24 hours via text, and he emphatically denies any of the things that have been put out there about him. He said the bat is a symbol. Obviously, it was provoked by their position coach, talking about we're bringing the wood, we're here to hit home runs, make a difference. He certainly didn't threaten anyone with a bat. He said that is a flat-out unequivocal lie. He also talked about the slurs that people are intimating that he said to Odell Beckham Jr. He swears that is an absolute unequivocal lie, and he doesn't appreciate his name being put out there like that in regards to those kind of allegations. He makes no apologies for talking trash to Odell Beckham Jr. He makes no apologies for getting in his face. He makes no apologies for getting in his head and telling him that he was going to get his butt whipped on this particular afternoon. He co-signs on all of that. He validated and confirmed all of those things. But he said that he never said those things, and he certainly never threatened him with the bat. So with that being said, what we have is a situation where we have to go by what we have seen. And what we saw was him getting at Odell Beckham Jr. a bit excessively and probably deserving of a fine, but Odell Beckham Jr. getting at him in such a way, particularly with that helmet-to-helmet hit. There's no excuse for that. That was excessive. Everybody with two eyes that saw that would agree that you have no business doing that on a football field in this day and age. There's no way around that. That doesn't mean that we're denigrating or condemning Odell Beckham Jr., the person. We're certainly not going to get into the nonsense that's been spewed about him on a personal level, because that's excessive and, quite frankly, none of our business. What is our business is what we saw on the football field and getting to the bottom as to why that happened. We know that Josh Norman got in his head and got to him, which he openly admits and won't apologize for. But he did say, I never threatened him with a bat. Nobody would do something like that. That's just ignorant. And he certainly denied that he went at him with any kind of slurs or anything of that nature. It was just football. They were talking trash. Odell Beckham Jr. took it personally as far as Josh Norman is concerned. And what happened, happened.
I cannot tell you how much I agree with everything you just said, and then some. I'm going to go times 10 everything you just said. And I am sorry, but I found every excuse that came out of the Giants camp yesterday absolutely laughable. To Molly's question, I have zero new sympathy for Odell Beckham Jr. It is preposterous to me. Let's start with the first side of the bat that we were told about. It is preposterous that a practice squad player who's not even dressed for the game, brandishing a bat on the sideline, would make Odell Beckham Jr. during warm-ups fear for his life and send him over the edge. Stephen A., we all know you are not allowed to take the bat out on the football field. And it is further preposterous to me that the sight of Josh Norman subsequently with just the bat in his hands, not threatening to hit Odell with it during warm-ups, just having the bat in his hands would further send Odell over the edge. And then we were told, reportedly, that Odell was told, maybe by Josh Norman, maybe by other Panthers before the game, that Josh was going to take him out, go for his knees. If I had a nickel for every time those words were uttered in pregame warm-ups in just about every NFL game that's ever played, I could own MetLife Stadium. I'd buy it, and I'd get all the proceeds and revenues. Because it happens, and it happens, and it happens again. And let's go to the gay slurs. Whatever slurs were uttered and aimed at Odell Beckham before the game, as you know and I know, it happens before nearly every game. Again, I don't want to seem unsympathetic. I'm not unsympathetic to the slur itself in an out-of-football context, but in this context, before a high-stakes NFL game, it happens all the time. And it's, again, preposterous to me that could send Odell Beckham Jr. completely out of control, over the edge, into, I would say, the biggest meltdown I have ever witnessed during a pro football game, which started right from the start. And we're back to the old expression, the kids' expression, sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never, and I'm going to paraphrase, words can never beat you. They can't beat you, and they beat him. They beat him right away. As Molly painfully knows, right away, Eli throws him a perfect ball, and he is so discombobulated. His mind is so on everything but catching the football that he dropped a pass. This is the guy that we say has the greatest hands we've ever seen in pro football. The camera just fixates on him before the game, making one-handed catches in the end zone. We know he made what we all said was the greatest catch ever last year against my Dallas Cowboys. We get all that, and then he drops the first ball thrown to him that could have set a whole different tone for the football game. And here's my final irony, Mr. Smith. I have been told repeatedly that Odell Beckham Jr. just might be the best trash talker in all of pro football, especially at the receiver position, going at it with the DBs. And the irony here is, to me, that the Panthers beat him at his own game. They took the words that he uses as weapons, not exactly the same words, but they turned words back against him, and it worked. Because we have all been culpable here. We've all put him on such a pedestal, and he's earned a lot of that pedestal. We have so glorified him, so idolized him, so put him in like all-time greatness that his skin has become paper thin. And Josh Norman was smart enough to see that leading up to this game, because this is Josh's MO. He engages in psychological warfare, and he isn't good at it. I think he's great at it. He got to Des Bryant at Jerry World on Thanksgiving, and he really got to the quote-unquote best receiver in pro football. So I'm sorry, all these excuses that I hear, or the logic or the explanation for why he went over the edge, I'm just not going to buy any of it, so I'm zero sympathy.
Well, I will say this to you, Skip Bayless, and I totally agree where you're coming from, but I think it's important to not jump off the subject but veer a little left and understand that we're not really calling Odell Beckham Jr. out, because he's not the one who's verbally making all of these excuses. It's a whole bunch of people speaking for him, whether it's teammates, whether it's analysts on the air. And that was one of the things that with all the analysts, and I'm not going to get into any names because there's too many to go across, but with as much profound respect as I have for them, everybody's missing the big picture to me. Everybody is sitting back, and because you're criticizing Odell Beckham Jr.'s actions during that game, everybody's acting like there's an indictment against him, and folks are engaging in character assassination. I didn't get that. What I got were people pointing out how his actions were a bit excessive, more so than we even see from the average receiver on this particular Sunday, and it sullied his name to some degree because we saw what extent he was willing to go through to quote-unquote retaliate, if indeed that's what he was doing. That blow to the head of Josh Norman was dangerous. That blow to the head of Josh Norman left us sitting here shocked that Josh Norman was on the airwaves talking about it, not just post-game, but after, not just yesterday, rather, but also immediately following the post-game, because folks were wondering how in God's name was he not concussed. So you're highlighting the actions by Odell Beckham Jr. and saying you simply can't do that. Now we listen to folks talk about him. This is not a bad kid. This kid is this kid is that. That ain't the point. Nobody's trying to denigrate him or character assassinate him and have that reputation follow him through the rest of his career. What you're trying to highlight for him, because he's just 23 years of age, is to say, look, if you go down that path, you're going to have a very short career, because you're going to get yourself in a world of trouble, and you're going to do more harm than good to yourself and your career than you could ever hope to do to the Josh Normans of the world. You're using it to serve as a warning and provide an educational moment so you'll know what to avoid in the future. That's all it is. But folks are running out there in a zest to protect him. They're losing sight of the fact, let's just deal with the fact that you're wrong. And I think that's one of the problems, Skip, that exists in professional sports and, dare I say, this world. People can't just own up and say they were wrong. To jump off the rails, my man Steve Harvey, made the mistake with the Miss Universe, announcing the wrong winner. He made a grave mistake. He apologized. He manned up. He said, I messed up. What more could he do? All you could do is apologize, be a man, and move forward. I wish more men were like Steve Harvey in that regard, and they could just own up to what they did wrong and move forward instead of looking for apologists to try and explain away everything.
I got it.
That's basically
it. Remember, as you well know, Steve Harvey's was a momentary mistake that happened on national TV. Odell's was a game long, maybe a half long mistake where it just went on and got worse and worse and worse. And again, as I brought up yesterday, I thought Tom Coughlin was very honest to a fault yesterday. He said, hey, I'm paraphrasing his words, but he said, I didn't want him thrown out of the game because I wanted to try to come back and win the game, and they almost did. And you say, well, why didn't his teammates talk to him? There's no veteran leadership on the New York Giants. This kid's big, man. He's on the cover of Madden. It's just hard. He's by far the most famous current New York football Giant, and he transcends the record of the team. The team's record obviously isn't very good, but Odell Beckham is huge in the National Football League. I told you yesterday, he's right up there with the quarterbacks right now in promotional priority to me.
But that doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve the right to make amends for his mistake by moving forward. And that's all I'm saying.
Okay,
he deserves a right to sit there. We sit there and say, hey, you messed up. You don't need to do this again. But he doesn't need to be excoriated. But Josh Norman did his job, and he doesn't deserve to be vilified either. It's football.
But I truly hope he learned his lesson because he did hurt his team. He accounts for 36% of their TDs. He's not going to be there on Sunday Night Football. The playoffs are on the line. It's really, really unfortunate.
Well, maybe they'll pull together and win in spite of his absence.
We'll see. There's another angle I want to get into now on this subject. Josh Norman's next opponent, the Atlanta Falcons, are really looking forward to this next matchup. Here's what Falcons wide receiver Roddy White told our ESPN Falcons reporter Vaughn McClure. I don't believe he's a tough guy. When you're saying you're out there talking, I don't pay attention to guys like that. I just don't think he's a tough guy. Their defense is good. They ain't over there just sitting there locking people up. They don't play defense like that. That's not how they play football. Julio Jones adding, everybody just keeps talking about Josh Norman. Josh Norman, he's a good football player. I don't think he's great yet, but he's a good football player. Skip, Atlanta, kind of defending him here.
Yeah.
What do you make of this?
Stephen A., right now, you're free to say, to step back from this and say, no Atlanta Falcon has the right to say one word about any Carolina Panther, because as we know, 2 weeks ago at Carolina, to use some of your language, they got, what are your favorite words, ramrodded and bum rushed at Carolina?
Yep, beat down in this particular case.
Okay, yeah, it was a complete annihilation. So you could say, shut up and try to play, Falcons, try to salvage what's left of your season. I don't think all that applies to this man, Roddy White. I've had the privilege of getting to know Roddy when he's come in to do the show here a couple of times. I like and respect Roddy White's view of the world. He gets it. This is his 11th year in pro football. He's 34 years of age. He's in decline. We all know he's fallen down the charts. He's now their fourth leading receiver for the Atlanta Falcons as they fade, and he fades. I don't know if he's been hurt. I don't know if he's just sort of winding down his career. But the point is, this man has been a big-time receiver in this league. This man has been a Pro Bowl receiver in this league. And I'm going to maybe not take these comments all the way to the bank, but let me say that I'm going to read some credibility into the things that Roddy White said about Josh Norman. And again, just to paraphrase, first of all, he says he's not a tough guy. He says, I've known tough guys. Now, he goes to the top. He goes to Revis and Richard Sherman and Talib, and then he goes back into the past to an Al Harris and a Champ Bailey. He says those are tough guys. And again, what he respects the most about those tough guys is those guys didn't do all that much talking. They just played, and they played physical football. And Roddy White is saying that if people really knew football, they would know that the Panthers play a lot of zone. They drop into cover 2, so he's got help, that he doesn't always just lock up a Julio Jones down after down after down, that he's got help from his safeties and his linebackers, because we all know Luke Kuechly can really play the pass as well as the run. So it's a scheme thing, according to Roddy, as much as it's a he thing, as in Josh Norman as the premier shutdown new corner in pro football. I'm going to listen to those remarks. And in the end, he says that all the talking that this made me laugh, actually, but all the talking that Josh Norman does, Roddy just dismisses it as yelling. He says, I don't even know what he's saying. He's just talking and talking until he's yelling, and it's almost like he can't even understand what's coming out of Josh Norman's mouth. So, big picture, I appreciated the perspective into which I can now put Josh Norman in the big picture. I think he's turned into, so far this year, the best corner in pro football just because he's made so many big plays in so many big games to help keep that team undefeated, including the play made in the end zone at Carolina on the last play of the game against New Orleans that saved the game. So I'm going to give him all that. I'm going to give him his due. But it made me think a little bit and ponder more about how I should think in the biggest picture about Josh Norman. And I appreciate Roddy saying that.
Well, we disagree because I didn't appreciate it. And I will emphasize the word we respectfully disagree, not just because I respect the position that you're taking, but I also respect Roddy White. From 2007 through 2012, that's 6 consecutive seasons that he was a 1,000-plus yard receiver. He is a guy, when younger and healthy, produced in this league. Roddy White could play. Obviously, he's been on the show. I respect him. I like him. I think he's good people. But at the same time, I don't think that this was the appropriate time for him to say what he said, nor do I think it was appropriate for him to be the one to say anything. Let's count the ways. The Atlanta Falcons lost 6 straight and 7 of their last 8 games following a 5-0 start. They have fallen off the map, rendering themselves pretty damn close to irrelevant. 2 weeks ago, they got stomped by the Carolina Panthers. I'm talking stomped. They got beat down and embarrassed, okay? So let's understand that. Let's also understand they're within the same division, just 3 to 3.5 hours down the road from one another. All right. And the Carolina Panthers are en route to possibly an unblemished, undefeated season, the first of which we may have seen since the New England Patriots did so years ago. And if they run the table and actually win the Super Bowl, unlike the Patriots were able to do, it'll be the first time that has happened since 1972 with the Miami Dolphins. That's the reality. So you pick this moment in time to sit there and talk about what you think about Josh Norman. Let me tell you something. The players on the Carolina Panthers don't think that way about Josh Norman. I'm doing NFL Countdown a few weeks ago, and Charles Johnson is in studio for NFL Countdown. This is before they played the Atlanta Falcons. And Charles Johnson sat there and said, Stephen A., go check the numbers. Go check the numbers of what Julio Jones has been able to do the last couple of years against Josh Norman. You'll see what it does. That's a bad boy we got on the corner over there. He's special. Cam has said so. Thomas Davis, he was also in the house. He said so. Kuechly and all of these boys say so. I'm going to roll with them based on the season that they're having and the level of production that the Carolina Panthers are putting forth. Nobody said anything about Josh Norman when the Carolina Panthers were 7-8-1 and weren't necessarily winning, even though they won the division with that putrid record. Nobody said anything to him about him when he came out as the 5th-round pick, all right, and was on the Carolina Panthers for the last 4 years, the 3 previous years before this year. But all of a sudden, you want to chirp when they're winning? I remember Roddy White sitting down for an interview with Julio Jones years ago. And somebody asked him whether or not the receiving tandem for the Dallas Cowboys or somebody else were better than him and Julio Jones. Roddy White started laughing and said, are you serious? Is that a serious question? And he started mocking people that would think such levels of idiocy. And he was right, because at the time, him and Julio Jones were bad boys. Nobody said anything. Roddy White might have a mellow voice, but he wasn't quiet. He wasn't somebody that sat there and was mute and had nothing to say. That's why he showed up on First Take, because he had a lot to say. He was on SportsCenter too. Had a lot to say. Had a lot to say in front of his lockers all of that time. Well, that was his turn. Now it's Josh Norman's turn. Don't hate on the brother. If the brother went out there and performed and contributed to handling his business, what you gonna say? Now, if you went out there and caught for 150, 200 yards and y'all had a competitive matchup, I get it. You just got stumped 38-0. Stomped. What you talking for? Wouldn't it behoove you to be quiet? Especially when you Roddy White and you haven't had 1,000-yard seasons since 2012. I know he's older, and I know injuries at play. Roddy White could play when healthy and younger. Mad respect for the brother. I ain't trying to disrespect him at all. I'm simply saying to him, that was your turn. The last 3 years, you haven't had 1,000-yard receiving. You're fourth receiver on the Atlanta Falcons right now, and the Carolina Panthers are rolling while y'all are tumbling. It ain't your turn anymore. It's his. Respect that man. That's all I'm saying. Don't come at him like that now that it's his turn, because when it was Roddy White's turn, Skip, don't tell me Roddy White was quiet. He talked, and you know that.
Okay, question. What if now, as out of line, out of place, out of time as it might be, Roddy White is still telling the flat-out truth about Josh Norman?
But wait a minute. I prefaced my comments about Roddy White by highlighting what Josh Norman's teammates say about him and his contribution to that squad.
They're not going to rip him. We know that.
Wait. Well, you'd be surprised what people do privately. They wouldn't go on the air and do it.
I got it.
But I talked to plenty of players that will rip a teammate privately.
No, they're not going to do it publicly.
We weren't talking publicly.
Right.
I'm bringing it public because he was positive about him. Whereas if he dogged him, I wouldn't have dimed him out like that.
Okay. Now, final question. As I brought up in our previous topic, clearly psychological warfare has become a strong part of Josh Norman's arsenal. So who's to say that Roddy White isn't shrewd enough to sit back and try to turn psychological warfare back on Josh before this game in Atlanta?
Well, that's fair.
Like he's just trying to call him out just to get under his skin the way he got under Odell's skin. I don't know. He might.
That's fair. That's fair, Skip. But the flip side to that is this. Josh Norman ain't the only reason you lost 38-0. You see what I'm saying?
No,
you got stomped by a collective Carolina Panthers squad. So if you're Roddy White, shouldn't you be more preoccupied with the Carolina Panthers than you are with Josh Norman?
Okay, but who's been the biggest weapon for the Falcons when they've been right during their 5-0 start? It's Julio Jones, right? Okay,
it's Julio Jones.
Who has shut down Julio? Whether he's had help or not, Josh Norman has. And even Julio, we didn't get to that, but Julio said yesterday, he's been good, but he's not great yet. Okay, so, that's fine. But again, maybe this is the guy you need to go after because you need to get Julio going again. Because I can just tell you what happened to my Dallas Cowboys after they led 28-17 at half of that earlier season game. It was just a wipeout in the second half because Julio took over.
All I'm saying is Julio Jones talking is one thing. Roddy White is another at this point. All due respect.
Stephen A. mentioned it. The Panthers shut out the Falcons Week 14. One of two shutouts in the NFL this season. The other, the Seahawks, blanking the Bears. That one was in Week 3.
The NFL has known about the concussion issue for years.
They're terrified of you. You're going to war with a corporation that owns a day of the week.
This is bigger than they are. They have to listen to us now.
Will Smith's controversial movie Concussion will be in theaters Christmas Day. Will Smith is already nominated for a Golden Globe for his role in this film. Stephen A. had all access with his fellow Philly guy. The two sat down in New York to discuss the movie and how it forever changed the way he viewed football as a fan and a parent. Here's Stephen A. and Will Smith.
First things first, why did you want to make this movie?
Well, first off, I did not want to make this film. When I first read it, I was like, oh, man.
What was the apprehension?
My son played football, and I grew up in Philly. I was getting battered by the Dallas Cowboys, watching Ron Jaworski and my Eagles get smashed. So I had deep emotion, connected to this game. And I didn't want to be that guy, And then I met Dr. Omalu, and I sat with him, and when, he told me his story, and he broke down the science, there was a moment when my heart jumped, because as a parent, I didn't know. And I had my son on the football field, and I didn't know the information. So to me, it felt like, putting him in a car without any driving lessons. So I felt like as a parent, if I didn't know, I knew that other parents didn't know.
So when you put it that way, I guess the next question for me would be, not knowing, what was the emotion that came through your mind? Was it the people need to know? Was it frustration with a game that you loved that was the National Football League and saying as a parent, how do we not know this? What was the emotion going through your mind?
It was, first it was frustration with myself, that as a parent, it's my job to be informed. It's like my kids are looking at me and they're trusting me that when I say something's cool, it's cool. So it was frustration with myself, and then beyond that, in hearing Dr. Omalu's story, I actually got inspired in the way that he talked about America. He's a Nigerian immigrant who has stars in his eyes about the American dream. So when he discovered this, he sort of rekindled for me the beauty of what this country is, and he kept saying, this is not how Americans are supposed to solve problems. So I got inspired about his story and telling his story to the world, and the issue around it and the football of it is one thing, but on the other side of it, it's really about the truth and how we tell and accept the truth from one another.
In the throes of doing it, did you run into anything that diminished your inspiration? While doing it?
Well, it's really hard to diminish my inspiration. I've said a few times, America's the only place that Will Smith would be allowed to exist. No other country is going to let me do what I do on the global level the way that I do it. So I'm proud when I sit my American passport down, So I felt inspired that there were people who didn't necessarily want the information to be delivered the way we were delivering it, but I felt confident that the truth would override everything.
Any communication with the National Football League at all in the process of doing this film?
Yeah, no contact between the creative team and the NFL. I've had no personal contact. The director had no personal contact with the NFL.
Was that by their choice or yours?
It was
your creative team.
I think it was mutual. For us, there's a truth of what Dr. Omalu experienced that we didn't need anyone else to co-sign. When we were dealing with situations and scenes that were NFL based or that were based on other people, we were trying to go from transcripts as much as possible, and we were trying to be as careful as we could be with the artistic license that you have to take when you put a story together, but we took it very seriously. We shot in Pittsburgh. The members of the families were there, on the set a lot. So we worked hard to keep it real.
I want to read a quote to you from Dr. Omalu. He said in an article GQ printed 2009, I'm sure you read that. He said, quote, "I was naive. There are times I wish I never looked at Mike Webster's brain. It dragged me into worldly affairs that I do not want to be associated with. Human meanness, wickedness, selfishness, people trying to cover up, to control how information is released. I started this not knowing I was walking into a minefield. That is my only regret." That's what he felt as obviously the man who discovered CTE. Absolutely. How did you feel as the individual portraying the man who said that?
So I got into all of that, and as an actor, you have to understand what a person is thinking and feeling. Will Smith, maybe naively, I have to sort of create a world for myself where human meanness and covering up or hatred are curable with love and truth. Yes, people do bad things. I don't really believe in bad people, and I know that might be naive, but I believe very firmly that as we push forward with the truth, and if we can keep as much love in our hearts as possible, even for our enemies, that's the process of evolution that I'm proud that I believe this film does well.
You obviously loved the game of football.
Yeah.
Had your son playing football.
Yeah.
Trey was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
He stopped playing after high school.
Right.
What's your love for football now that you've done all of this?
It's football is one of the most beautiful games and most beautiful sports you'll ever watch. It's the biggest, strongest, fastest, most powerful human bodies on earth, so that's never going to not be beautiful. But by the same token, at the same time, it's dangerous in a way that at a minimum, the information and the reality and the science of what's happening has to be injected for the players to play the game in a way that maybe is different, maybe is not. But I want to be a part of delivering the information. I think what this film does is it takes something that's really complex and really complicated and something that hides in plain sight, and it makes it simple and digestible and comprehensible.
Getting a little bit away from the film, Dr. Amalo just recently wrote an article in the New York Times encouraging parents essentially not to let their kids play football. It's one thing for adults to play.
Absolutely.
Once we have the information, but kids shouldn't be exposed to it.
Right.
Where does Will Smith stand on that now that he has portrayed Dr. Amalo in this film?
Will Smith is not a doctor, so Will Smith would never be so arrogant as to think that he can make a medical recommendation for what parents should do. I don't want nobody telling me what I should do with my kids, so I am delivering the information as an artist. I studied it, and I think in my desire to be of service and make a contribution, I've created something that I think can be helpful in parents making decisions that are their decision, not mine. I would never step into that.
You've done a lot of great work throughout your illustrious career. Where does this rank, this film?
Yeah, this is absolutely a little bit of a turn for me. It's
ain't Hitch, ain't Bad Boys.
There's none of that. None of that. Yeah, this is I've definitely made a shift to I'm 47, so I need my contributions to be more potent. I want the films. This film is funny. There are things about it that you get some good laughs. It's beautiful entertainment. It's great performances, and I think Hollywood and cinema at its best does all of those things. But then it can also be enlightening, and it can also be informative. So this film fires on all of those cylinders, and I enjoy how that feels when I'm wearing that kind of artistry.
Congrats. All the best to you, and good
Appreciate
luck.
you.
Good luck to your Eagles.
Appreciate you. Hey, Caleb told me, I had to say his name on TV.
That's right.
So
did you say it?
So that's my brother-in-law.
That's right. Say the full name.
For Caleb Pinkett. Caleb Pinkett.
We're good. Thanks a lot, bro.
Thank you, man. As always, watch your head.
You can feel a buzz in the air. You know something special is about to occur.
Clemson, Oklahoma, followed by Alabama, Michigan State. The College Football Playoff, 3 Eastern, New Year's Eve, on ESPN and ESPN Radio.
Welcome back into First Take. In case you're just joining us, Stephen A. sat down with Will Smith in New York to discuss his upcoming film Concussion, which will be released on Christmas Day. Stephen A., this film obviously very controversial. Will Smith portrays Dr. Omalu, the pathologist who discovered CTE. What did you learn from sitting down with Will?
Well, what I learned just by sitting down with him and then talking to him after I'd interviewed him, is that obviously it was an incredible concern. It moved him as a parent of a football player. His son was playing high school sports and what have you. He just felt like the players need to know, and that he believes that obviously America being the greatest country in the world, incredibly concerned about its citizens as well. The National Football League in particular would then take the appropriate steps, once the players were more well informed. And I think that what resonated with me is that it gave you the impression, and obviously, dare I say, the fact that a lot of players simply were not aware of the severity of these issues. They knew that these are the kind of things that were going on, but they weren't aware of the residual effects and the residual impact it could ultimately have on their life. And folks like Dr. Omalu, played by Will Smith, just obviously felt fervently that people needed to know, they had a right to know, and it's something that everybody needed to be aware of, to the point where it was illustrated visually for all eyes to see. When you see a guy like Mike Webster, who was the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the way that he's portrayed in the movie, Skip, going through what he went through before he ultimately died. Terry Long drinking antifreeze. Dave Dorson shooting himself. The list goes on and on. Mood swings, depression, homelessness, loss of memory, all of these different things. The movie, which obviously I saw the screening, it was a very good movie. Excellent performance by Will Smith, I have to say. It was just one of those things where we can read about it all day long, but when you visually see the kind of potential impact it can have, it's clearly very, very riveting. And Will Smith made it a point to tell me that numerous players have reached out to him, talking to him about how they can't wait to see this film. And obviously they're hearing that he did it justice. And I'm here to confirm, as a person who saw the movie, he most certainly did. It definitely made you take a step back. As fans of the NFL that we are, knowing how violent this game is, what comes with this. And as you would say on many occasions, Skip, you sign up for this, you know what you're getting into. The reality is that this film sort of gives you the impression that maybe, just maybe, as much as you think you may know what you're getting into, you may not realize that. That's basically what I got.
I got it. I want to go two big directions with you. Let's start and stay with the great Will Smith. Obviously, this man is box office. This man is an extremely accomplished actor with a long resume who has remained extremely popular and crosses all lines. Black, white, name the color. Will Smith is popular. Crossover popular. So when I first heard he had chosen to play this character in this movie, and this man says in the movie, this doctor, God did not intend for us to play football. As long as we do, men will die. Now that's a mouthful, man. And for Will Smith to willingly choose to play a doctor who is attacking the most popular sport in this country was surprising to me. And because, Stephen A., I think most fans won't love it that Will chose to play this character. I could be wrong. Now, I hope he wins a whole bunch of awards for portraying this character, because it has potential to win him awards. Whether it has potential to be big box office, again, I never can guess about these things. When I least expect it, some movie just takes off. As they say about Hollywood, nobody knows what's going to work or not. Maybe this will work, and God bless them, I hope it does. My gut feeling is that a lot of fans, even sophisticated fans, aren't really interested at the height of pro football season going to this movie and hearing all this. I think most fans know that this is all operating out there. It's not that they're just turning deaf ears to this. They get it, but it's part of the attraction of the game that it has obvious inherent risks and dangers to it. That's part of the appeal of pro football. You know that, and I know that. So back to Will's choice of playing this, he said many times, as he gets older, as an artist, he'll choose more, edgier films to make people think, and he alluded to that. And by the way, your interview is sensational. That's the first time I heard it. And it was riveting, start to finish. Great questions, right on time. Well done. But I wonder deep down if he fears there'll be a backlash of unpopularity because he chose to play this character in the big picture.
Well, let me say this to you. It's not that he doesn't care, but he doesn't worry about it, because he believes as an artist, you have to perform your art. You have to do the job.
Yep.
And I remember years ago, Will Smith told me this, and Denzel Washington confirmed it to me. Denzel Washington has a very, very popular statement. He says, do what you have to do, so eventually you can do what you want to do. Okay. There's a price that you pay in artistry that you have to perform in order to ultimately graduate to doing the things that you want to do. And when I bring that up, I bring it up because it seemed important to Will, talking to him privately as well as on camera. It seemed incredibly important to him that as much information as could be put out there was put out there. But he also went to the other side, Skip, and tirelessly pointed out that he loves the NFL, and his love for the NFL hasn't dissipated, not to mention the fact that he wanted to acknowledge that he knows, like everybody else knows, that the NFL have done some things to address its safety issues. So in the aftermath, or right before talking to Will Smith, I actually spoke to the NFL prior to the interview. And there's a couple of things that I want to point out here, Skip. I still got it in my email right now. It says here, in the past decade, this is from the NFL, in the past decade, the league has made 39 rules changes related to player health and safety. In addition to team medical staff, there are independent concussion specialists present on both sidelines at every single NFL game. With sideline technology, medical personnel have access to the electronic medical records of all players. Additionally, the medical timeout, a new change implemented this year, allows an independent athletic trainer in the press box to stop the game to have a player receive medical attention should they show signs of distress or disorientation. And by the way, in 2013, they launched a 4-year, $60 million collaboration with GE to advance concussion research, prevention, and diagnosis and treatment. So when you look at what the NFL has done in terms of making those steps, Will Smith was aware of it, but still felt compelled to do this film because that speaks to what they've done since the issue has come to light. What he wanted to highlight is still the potential residual impact, make sure it's illuminated, but also I think there was something inside of him that wanted to highlight the stress and duress that Dr. Amalu had to experience because when he first came out with CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, when he first came out with it, you know, there was resistance. People called him a quack, said he didn't know what he was doing, said his prognosis, his diagnosis was ridiculous, etc., etc. And so that's that underdog story that appeals to an artist, along with the illumination of, wow, we all need to know about this.
Right. And as you well know, if you look back at Will's resume, he will take chances on things that he likes that are going to make people think. I Am Legend, Pursuit of Happiness, and even all the way back, a bigger risk to me in a different way was Bagger Vance. So you got, he will try things that you think, wow, that's not what I expect from Will Smith, but that's what I love and respect the most about Will Smith. Now,
well, that's what makes him great.
That's correct. Okay, now back to this issue. Look, the best part about all this, about this film, about this new focus on concussions, is that we have new protocols to save the players from their fearless selves. That's the best thing that's happened, and that's a huge positive for this sport. But I think deep down, even though Will admits that he now would have second thoughts about letting his son play high school football, because he said, you know, all I ever worried about was spine or knee injuries, and now I'm worried more about the head. Even though he says that, he also says that the upshot is we can now make football better. And I don't think he wants us to do away with football the way
he doesn't.
The film comes across like at some points Dr. Amalu wants to just do away with football. Well, that's not going to play well in this country, obviously.
But that's not. Now, but unfortunately, they're not going to care much about what Dr. Amalu says, more so than they'll care about what Will Smith is saying. And Will Smith is saying that's absolutely not what he feels.
Okay,
he still loves football, and he wants you to love football.
Okay, now my personal reflection on all this. I've been covering this league for 40 years. I have known hundreds of ex-players and stay in touch with many of them. I should probably have more sympathy for their plights, but I don't, because they were all pretty smart to very smart individuals. And trust me on this, Stephen A. Smith, they knew they were playing a high-risk game, because clearly you'd have to be a fool, be an idiot, be an imbecile to not think that if I'm a great athlete and a big man, and I'm running as fast as I can head on into another man, something could go wrong, right? I mean, they knew that they would have symptoms. They'd be seeing stars for days. They've had headaches for days. So, again, these studies have brought to the forefront, oh, wow, this could really go off the tracks at some point if you don't watch it, although I do think that's slightly exaggerated. But do we need to go?
Yeah, we
you're
do.
giving me the sign, and I'm right in the middle of the story. So, but let's just stop, I guess. Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was interested in hearing more from you, Skip.
I was.
I want to hear more too, and we'll get into it next. Stephen A., this is a bigger issue than sports. We appreciate you sitting down. Wonderful work by you and Skip. We'll get the rest of your story later. Sorry that had to get interrupted. Meanwhile, the NFL suspended Odell Beckham 1 game for his actions toward the Panthers' Josh Norman on Sunday. The appeal is expected to take place on Wednesday. This is what Norman had to say about the situation on Mike and Mike yesterday.
When you take that in too far, like when you go at somebody maliciously like that and go head hunt, if you want that kind of game, I mean, that's outside of the game. That's not in the rule book anymore. I mean, that's on some other type of stuff. I mean, we can go there. I don't think you want that to happen. But at the same time, I know where I'm at. So I'm going to be bigger about the situation and just, continue to keep showing this stuff, telling the refs, continue to do that. I mean, I don't know how much more I can do.
One Giant source told our Ian O'Connor the receiver was unnerved by the fact that one Panther carried a baseball bat onto the field during warm-ups and it got in the hands of Josh Norman. Giants players heard Panthers players directing gay slurs at Beckham. We now welcome in Ryan Clark for a little perspective here of someone who's been in these positions. Ryan, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Quick point. Could you please point out, you have been a mentor to this young man for a long time, to his earliest days at LSU.
I met him his freshman year. LSU, really liked the kid, very humble, worked extremely hard, was a good player at LSU. And, you want to see good players from your school do well, also good kids. And then I played him last year. And he was, and Skip, you and I have talked about this off camera before. He was the first LSU player I actually wanted to put my hands on. First. And it probably was in a more big brother, hey, man, I want to get you to stop doing this type of way, but I had that type of feeling.
What type of way? Describe it as best you can.
I just wanted him to get it under control. He is a great talent.
Talk.
It was trash talk. It was disrespect, which are all parts of the game. But I'm watching guys on the Redskins feel a certain way about him. And for me, I wanted them to notice him for his talent because I'm actually proud of that. Not proud of the way he's behaved. And so I'm going to preface what I say, how I feel about the game by understanding that the way he behaved was classless. The way he behaved is something we don't want to see in the game. It is something that somebody who is an ambassador for the game, because he is so popular, has to understand he cannot do. But even with that, he didn't do anything in this game that I haven't seen a ton of times. Mm-hmm. There are offensive linemen who play and make their money doing these things every week. Hands to the face constantly. Michael Bennett just comes out and says, you can call hands to the face every play. There are linemen that get punched in the face every play. What I did see was, I don't know if it got in Josh Norman's hand, but Marcus Ball, who was a practice squad player, is face-to-face with Odell Beckham before the game with the bat in his hand. I don't know what he's saying, but you can see in the video that Odell Beckham is clearly unnerved by it. And I watched him play physical the whole game, whether it was Cortland Finnegan, if he was blocking Josh Norman downfield. Some of the things that were legal, he was doing. He was trying to impose his physicality on the Carolina Panthers because I think Josh Norman knew and everybody else knew he can't check him. Bottom line, if you watch the game, and Josh Norman is having an exceptional year.
He is.
Early interceptions, he's a great zone player, reads the game well. 2 times he was matched up man-to-man. Odell Beckham was targeted. He dropped one, and on the other one he caught a touchdown.
Yep.
And so I think they went at it to say, you know what, this is how we have to beat him, and he let them beat him that way. But the crackback block, to me, is no different than the Cody Wallace hit on Bruton later on in the day with the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Denver Broncos. Now, that didn't have all the outside context to it. There wasn't the hand fighting. Cody Wallace wasn't slammed earlier before. But this is something that happens in games around pals. And I do understand Odell Beckham circles back. They feel like he's targeting him, and he is. But in a sense, though, he was targeting everybody. There's another play early on in the fourth quarter where he gets a pass interference for blocking too early. He blocks a guy out of bounds. We've never seen Odell Beckham try to impose his physicality that way. Do I think he got carried away? Yes. But I do not think he deserves to be suspended because now what the NFL is reading to, and this is Roger Goodell again, he's reading into intent. He's reading into, I feel like he tried to hurt him because of the things or the other circumstances that we saw outside of that one play. And I think that's a slippery slope because now you have to watch every hit and say, oh, you know what? Maybe that was wrong. Maybe he was trying to hurt him. Now, in with this. Maybe when I watch all these other guys who play the game and they condemn Odell Beckham and make him the worst player ever and what he did are the worst acts ever, maybe I'm still close enough to remember telling somebody on the field when they clipped me and had words with me, telling them, hey, man, it's coming back. You do not have to worry about it. Now, I didn't have to circle around. I hit you in your face, but it was coming back. And however it happened, however it played out, it played out. But this is part of football. And Josh Norman, all I can say to him is he had a part to play in this too. And when your quarterback beats you up, there's something there about you. And so I think both guys have something to play. Did Odell maybe take it too far? Yes. Does he deserve to be suspended? No. I see the NFL's point. Concussion movie coming out. We're trying to outlaw these type of hits out of the game. We have to reprimand him for his behavior, at least push him back a little bit because he had some other things earlier this year, but I don't think he deserds to be suspended for that.
So he should not have been ejected from the game after that hit?
No.
Okay.
That's not a CBA bargain punishment for what is still a football play. Was the ball dead? Was he still moving? I mean, it's iffy. We've seen that hit many a times by the pile, and it does get flagged. That one wasn't. It's supposed to get flagged. But guys don't get ejected for that hit unless you're asking the referee to say, well, these guys have been fighting. I think that was meant with malice to maim. And on the other point, I don't remember hitting too many people that I didn't want to hurt or that I didn't want them to feel it and know it. And so I just think we're taking this thing and we're making it more than it is. Does he need to get himself under control? Yes. Should he be suspended? I don't think so.
Stephen A.
Well, I disagree with Ryan about the suspension. I think he deserves the suspension. But I also think Cody Wallace deserves to be suspended. I think anybody who launches head first, helmet first, into the air of another player should be suspended. But I do agree with Ryan that that's all it is. It was heated. It got excessive. It was wrong and foolish for Odell Beckham Jr. to do it. Josh Norman clearly did some instigating. He can't be completely absolved in all of this, but it's a part of the game. I just think that the one suspendable act was what Odell Beckham Jr. did on that hit. That's just my opinion in regards to that. But I think that anybody that does that deserves to be suspended for a game. Having said all of that, because it was in the context of a football game and because of all the things that was transpiring prior to that moment, leading up to all of those, what we want to call it, immature acts, whatever we want to call it. I don't think that Odell Beckham Jr. should be vilified and, character assassinated and all of this stuff. It's simply a matter of we're not allowing that in this day and age in the sport of football. That's not what we're doing. We don't need to do that. And this is why we're suspending you. That's all it should be. It shouldn't be anything more than that. And it certainly shouldn't be a referendum on the character of Odell Beckham Jr. because of this. He talked trash. He instigated. He needs to calm himself down. But you know what? There are a lot of people in the NFL that have done a lot more heinous things that he's ever come close to. And to talk about him in a villainous fashion as if he's like that is wrong. The guy lost his temper because they got to him before the game. Let's leave it at that and stop treating this kid like he's a criminal. He was on the football field. He overreacted because they got in his head. That's all that happened. Nothing more.
Okay, I buy that. Obviously not a criminal. Now, let's go back to what sparked all this, the pregame. I'm curious as to how you saw the why here, because I was shocked. And again, we had a whole pre-week hype. It's almost like a heavyweight fight. It's one-on-one in a way that we almost never have one-on-one in a big football game. It doesn't usually boil down to that, the way, and we're all...
We're excited.
Yeah, we're excited, but we helped build it. We did whole topics on this show about who's going to win the matchup.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay? Because it was but it was legit because it looked like it was going to be a great matchup between, at this moment, the best corner in football. Although he is a zone corner, so I don't know. That's why we talked about Roddy White's.
Hey, you got to be good at what they ask you to do, and he is.
You got to be good, and he's really good at that, and he's hot right now.
Right.
He's having a hot year. Maybe next year won't be. I have no idea, but he is on a roll right now, as are they. And we have all, even last week, we said Odell Beckham Jr. has proven to be the best receiver in football because nobody can do all the things that he can do, catching, running, quickness, speed, the whole. And he runs pretty physically, too, so he's got the whole package, clearly. With Des Bryant injured, we're saying, okay, he's the guy. So now we got the matchup. And they bring out their bat that they brought out before a lot of different games, and a practice squad player standing on the sideline brandishing the bat at him. Okay, is that going to send Ryan Clark over the edge when at kickoff? I don't think so. I mean, help me out here.
Well, I think more is involved. Watched the show earlier this week, and it's been tweeted that some Giants players heard some things before the game, and it is a big deal.
I mean,
it's something,
slurs uttered.
Right? Yeah, it's something that's being talked about in concerns to Odell Beckham, and in a football player's mindset, the one thing we don't attribute to Odell is physicality. We just don't. We talk about all these other things he does, but we don't talk about that. And you come out early in the game, he's blocking Josh Norman. It's a little flop, but Norman slams him afterwards. And I think coming into the game, he said to himself, I have to go out there and stop people from doing this.
Okay.
Even early on in the preseason, they would just hit him for no reason. Because, like you said, he's virtually, with the rules of the game, unstoppable if you want to try to cover him. And so I think that got to him, and he in himself put himself in a place where he felt like he had to prove his toughness, and it just went too far.
Okay. Got it.
Appreciate your perspective, and you're going to be back with us later to discuss the concussion issue. Looking forward to your insight there as well.
There's a steal by Chris Paul. He'll go low, score, Clippers lead. Chris Paul with a steal and the basket. Oh, real my, what a play by Chris Paul.
Thunder trailing by 199-98. 8 seconds. Thunder steps right, pulls up top. Angle right, 18-foot jumper drop. Thunder lead by 1. Kevin Durant rises, rips the cord. 199 Thunder with 5.8 seconds left. Paul dancing, dashing, pulls up from the wing. 15-footer cross by Ibaka. Thunder win. 199. Surge denies. First Paul at the horn.
KD came to play. That was Kevin Durant's 17th go-ahead field goal in a final minute or fourth quarter or overtime in the last 5 seasons. That's the most by any player in that span. Now, with the loss, the Clippers fall to 16-13 on the season, which is 5th in the Western Conference. Stephen A., what is going on with the Clippers?
Well, first things first, let's take a moment to give Kevin Durant some props. The brother showed up last night, particularly in the waning moments, with that big-time J combined with the block shot on Chris Paul to seal the deal. If we're going to sit up there and point out how he didn't deliver against LeBron James, I'm damn sure going to point out how he did deliver against the Clippers last night. Now let's get to the Clippers. Here's the deal. The Los Angeles Clippers are a slightly above average basketball team. That's what this comes down to. And that's a problem for Doc Rivers because Doc Rivers is Doc Rivers and he's brought to L.A. for them to be great. Chris Paul is not average. He's great. Blake Griffin is not average. He's great, although he was average last night with 7 of 21 shooting. DeAndre Jordan averaging 13 rebounds, nearly 3 blocks a game. Problem, still shooting 39% from the free throw line. That's a big problem. They're 0-4 against the big dogs in the Western Conference, Golden State, San Antonio, and at least based off of last year, the Houston Rockets. When you combine all of that and now noise about how Josh Smith is a problem with guys mimicking about how guys need to know their role, etc., etc. Here's what I would sit there and say, not that Doc Rivers, a champion and one of the great coaches in the game, should need my advice. But, Skip, here's what I'm going to tell you that needs to be said. Everybody ain't made for L.A. You too, Molly. Everybody ain't made for L.A.
I am.
Some players don't need to be in la-la. Some players can't handle it. The biggest complaint that has been levied against the Los Angeles Clippers thus far this year is their inconsistency as it pertains to their energy or lack of focus. I'm not going to put that on Chris Paul or Blake Griffin or DeAndre Jordan because they've been in L.A. But when you got new guys and you mix that in, and you're talking about L.A. and off nights and being in La-La with 80-degree sunshine, you know, while winter's going on everywhere else, it could be a distraction. Certain people ain't made for cities like L.A. as professionals. It's just that simple. And I think that Doc Rivers is finding that out. They're not going to say it because you got people like my boy, the great J.A. Adonde and others who don't believe there's really cause for change. I beg to differ. I disagree. You got to make folks appreciate the fact that you could be in some cold weather, you know, city with not much to do as opposed to being in La-La, L.A. You better learn to appreciate this. And I think the only way to do that is for him to make a major trade to shake up the foundation of the Clippers, because where they are right now, all they're going to do is make the playoffs, go to the second round if they're lucky, and go home. Ain't no championship on the horizon for this crew as presently constructed. I'm here to tell Doc Rivers that right now. It ain't happening.
Okay, I don't know about all that la-la business, but I do know this because I told you before the year started. Doc acquired 3 players who in different ways are all very difficult to coach. Josh Smith, Lance Stevenson, Paul Pierce in his own way. It's just difficult. He's juggling their minutes with his son's minutes. That's a problem because Austin's a pretty good player. A lot of people in the league didn't think that, but now Doc is saying, he can play. Look, I thought he was really good against the Spurs in the playoffs. But you're juggling minutes with difficult people to coach. And you're also juggling a DeAndre Jordan. And by the way, they were on their way to having their first quality win the other night in San Antonio last Friday night. They were in control of that game. And all of a sudden, Coach Popovich said, I got to do it. I'm going to hack a DeAndre. He uglied up the game. And guess what? He changed the game because DeAndre still can't shoot a free throw. As you say, 39%. And this is the stat of the day for me. DeAndre is now 4th in the NBA in attempted free throws. He's 45th in made free throws. That is a disaster waiting to happen from night to night where you can't win that way. So to me, I'm not writing them off because there's a way to turn this. Because to your point, Chris Paul, Blake, you know, even DeAndre in his own way, when you keep him in his lane, they can still play and they're going to be a force and a factor. But right now, this is a volatile mix that ain't working.
And I'm going to tell you something right now, Skip. Listen, I'm a fan of DeAndre Jordan. Again, he had to man up and should have called Mark Cuban to let him know he wasn't coming. But that's the only issue I've ever had with him outside of his free throws. I think this brother is a big-time component. But as long as he's hitting free throws like that, they will never win because if they take him out of the game, they're a completely different team. The Los Angeles Clippers are not winning anything so long as this dude can't hit free throws.
And by the way, even with him a lot in the lineup, they are 17th in the NBA in points allowed. That is not good. No. That's not big time.
Not big time at all. It is certainly not.
By the way, Skip, Molly, the other thing is, Chris Paul, you got Jamal Crawford and Paul Pierce to a lesser degree and Blake Griffin. Why is the 6-foot Chris Paul constantly with the ball in his hands trying to take game-winning shots? He's the quintessential point guard. He's the guy that's supposed to be setting it up for somebody else. But time and time again, he's the one being asked. Against the Chicago Bulls, he took the shot and missed it. Last night, he got the shot blocked by the 6'10", Kevin Durant. He's supposed to be the orchestrator, not the guy who's shooting it. Something's wrong with that picture, too.
The Battle Frog Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame and Ohio State were in the playoff conversation all season long. While they had 3 losses between them, they were only by a combined 7 points. 2 of the best in the nation collide in Arizona. Number 7, Ohio State. Number 8, Notre Dame. The Battle Frog Fiesta Bowl. Coverage begins New Year's Day at 1 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.
Any communication with the National Football League at all in the process of doing this film?
Yeah, no contact between the creative team and the NFL. I've had no personal contact. The director had no personal contact with the NFL.
Was that by their choice or yours? In your creative team?
I think it was mutual. For us, there's a truth of what Dr. Omalu experienced that we didn't need anyone else to co-sign. When we were dealing with situations and scenes that were NFL based or that were based on other people, we were trying to go from transcripts as much as possible, and we were trying to be as careful as we could be with the artistic license that you have to take when you put a story together, but we took it very seriously. We shot in Pittsburgh. The members of the families were there, on the set a lot. So we worked hard to keep it real.
You just saw a clip from Stephen A's interview with Will Smith discussing his upcoming film Concussion, which will be released on Christmas Day. We welcome Ryan Clark back to the desk, who wears many hats. Let me get this title right. Executive Committee Member of the NFLPA. So you have a unique perspective on this subject. Really interested to hear your take. Tell us what what impact this movie will have on the NFL.
Well, I think for us, it's huge because we've talked about it on conference calls already. And, for D. Smith to even say, guys, listen, it's 85 to 90% accurate of things that have happened.
Wow.
Dr. Omalu's research and information, it was hid by the NFL. The NFLPA testified to that, and it led to the loss of 2-a-days. It led to the number of padded days being taken down from where they were to having a limit on how many times you can have these guys hit one another. And so a lot of those things that happened in the movie, maybe not the conversation word for word, but the things that went on that will be portrayed in the movie were actual situations that Dr. Omalu had to face when trying to bring this information forth. There is going to be people who see this movie and that don't think the NFLPA and NFL has tried to make strides since then. They won't understand the work that has been put in, the research that has been put in, actually by both sides, to try to make this game safer. I think this story needed to be told so they can see maybe how far we've come as opposed to where we were. And this is not my PA hat, not my analyst hat, as a player, as a guy who played this game and who loves this game, whose son plays this game in high school now, even with the understanding that I have, which is far greater than what it was even 5 years ago, through different doctors who we speak to every year in PA meetings, I understand what the fight was then, but I also know, especially as a player, how far we've come to protect ourselves and also educate and give the information needed. And so I think this movie is a good conversation piece, but this movie is not a documentary.
No.
You know, this movie is not what we should take and say, this is exactly what happened, exactly where football is now. It's grown from then, but Dr. Omalu was a very integral piece in starting this movement. And when you have the Mike Websters and the Dave Dursons and the Junior Seaus, it is very real to players, and I think this will, though, make it at least a little more real to the people who watch it, to know what these guys are still risking every Sunday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, whatever day the NFL wants to own to do their jobs.
Stephen A.
No, Skip. I want to hear from you, buddy. Go ahead. Take it away. Take your time.
Well, you threw me a curve there, so I was waiting for you to go. Okay.
You got the interview.
Let me go back to my time in pro football covering this sport.
Yeah.
40 years worth, back to the 70s and the Miami Dolphins of Don Shula. That's where I started. Known hundreds of players, keep in touch with many of them. And I wonder, as I look back, how many knew that there was a danger factor in head trauma. Because I'm going all the way back to the night that Roger Staubach prematurely and shockingly announced his retirement. He was 37, but remember, he didn't start playing because of his Vietnam commitment until he was 27. And I got a hold of him that night on the phone. And I was a little surprised. He said, 2 independent doctors, independent of the Dallas Cowboys, told me, I just can't suffer any more head trauma. I'm going to be a candidate for real problems down the road. Now, that was 1979 that happened. So I was pretty aware of it then, and I thought most players were. Troy Aikman retired a little prematurely and cited head trauma as one of the main factors. If memory serves, Steve Young cited concussions as a factor in his retirement. So it's not like this was a dirty little secret that nobody knew about. Is that fair to say?
No, definitely.
So I try to get back to where are we heading with all this? I said earlier, glad we've cleaned it up to the point that you now have the information at your fingertips where you can save yourself from your fearless self, right?
Right.
And you were as high collision a football player as I have ever watched. You had no regard for your head or your body. You were headlong into every play because you were an undrafted free agent and you're going to give yourself up every time. I can't tell you how much I respected that. But the point is, would you have done it knowing what you know now? Would you do it all over again? Absolutely. I know you would. And you have no problem with your son playing this very high-risk, dangerous game. But he does have the information. Well, when I get to, that's what I was asking Stephen A. earlier, where are we heading here? Will football become extinct because of this movie? I don't think so.
No.
I hope not. I just hope we have a little better awareness of where we're heading with all this.
Now,
right?
I think that's the huge reason for making the movie, even listening to Stephen A.'s interview of Will Smith, who said, he said, I'm a fan. He was like, but I believe this story needed to be told. And I think if you do a documentary on Dr. Omalu, nobody watches it. Maybe with a Will Smith backing, you get some people just to notice it.
You do need a little artistic license in the story.
Right.
You're going to have to exaggerate a few things.
Because you got to make it entertaining.
Yes, you do. Go ahead, Stephen A.
Skip, I gotta get back to your question about where are we heading with this. Because, you know, one of our editor, an editor for the show, Chuck Solituro, sent an email pointing out how the NFL balks at funding a major brain study. They backed out. They backed out of a major brain study that they were involved between football and the brain disease. It says here, spent years criticizing researchers who warned about the dangers of football-related head trauma, has backed out of one of the most ambitious studies yet on a relationship between football and brain disease. The 7-year, $16 million initiative was to be funded out of a $30 million research grant the NFL gave the National Institutes of Health in 2012. But apparently, somebody that's taken over the research project. The NFL has been highly critical of the NFL, and the NFL backed out of it. I bring that up, Ryan and Skip and Molly, to highlight this reality. When you ask the question, Skip, where are we going with this? Well, let me tell you where Will Smith wanted to go. He wanted to go a couple of places. One was to inform folks as much as they possibly could. Two was to make sure to remind folks that the research isn't finished. Because, again, with all of the 39 rules changes over the last several years and all of the things that I read to you earlier that the NFL has instituted to elevate the level of elevate the attention to player safety, etc., there is still more research that's scheduled to be done. So it gives the impression that we're just getting started. CTE is not the end-all, be-all. This is just the beginning. And the other thing that Ryan alluded to that I found most uncomfortable, in all honesty, watching the film, was that it had at the very least implied that there was strenuous effort exercised on the part of the NFL to ever allow this information to come to light. It speaks to Ryan Clark and his willingness to address certain things that the Players Association may feel about the NFL, because I got news for you. When people bring up CTE and they show concerns for the players and they're complaining about somebody, it's usually not the Players Association. It's usually the NFL. And so I think that when you look at those three components that I just brought up, that's where we're going with this. We're going to highlighting or thereby incentivizing the NFL to continue to do more, while also reminding us why they need to do more by talking about CTE, and then further enlightening us about the need for additional research, because CTE may very well just be the beginning and it's not the end. And just because you know more and you learn more about the dangers doesn't mean that you stop. It means that you're more enlightened. We know about the dangers of alcohol. We know about the dangers of cigarettes, tobacco, etc. We know, and people still do it, and it's still multi-billion-dollar business. That's what Will Smith was saying to me.
Okay, real quick. The reason the NFL pulled its funding of this new project is that the researcher involved is named Dr. Ann McKee of Boston University. She's a neuropathologist, and a lot of critics of the movie think that she deserved at least as much credit for the early research as Dr. Omalu did, and that she belonged in the movie. So I think it's ironic that the NFL has pulled funds because I think they fear her.
Yeah, no, definitely from the PA side, his research was suppressed. It was hidden. It was part of what we used to implement a lot of the things that we've gotten implemented. We are still researching it. We are still funding research to find out more and to know more in order to help the players. I don't know that this movie changes anything or any of that. I think it makes people aware. I think it's a way to also make money using the biggest game in America. Yeah. But from our standpoint, we still want to protect our players. We still want our players to have the information, but we also still love this game.
Yep.
Of course. Ryan, thank you so much for your perspective. Appreciate it. And the league did make a $30 million grant in 2012 for concussion research. Just want to add that there. During his weekly radio appearance on 106.7 The Fan in Washington, Kirk Cousins was asked if he wants to stay with the Redskins. Quote, "I want to be where I'm wanted, and we'll find out where I'm wanted in a few months. But we have a job to do before that, and that's where my focus is. It's on right here and right now. And if we get the job done, I'd like to think I'll be wanted here." The Redskins will clinch the NFC East with a win Saturday night against the Eagles. Skip, has Cousins done enough to become the long-term franchise quarterback of the Washington Redskins?
Stephen A., I'm going to say no. I need to see a little more. Kirk came into this year with 18 touchdown passes to 19 career interceptions. He has been way better than I imagined he could ever be. He's led a couple of comebacks at home, but I need to see more on the road. In fact, I want to see more at Philly And I want to see more at Jerry World in the regular season finale if, in fact, they need to win that game. So I'm not sold, even though I got to give it up to Kirk Cousins. He's been far more of what Mike Shanahan predicted he could be this year.
I got to give it up to him because he's having a really, really good year. What is it? Passing for 3,625 yards, 22 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a 66 QBR. He deserves a lot of credit for that. But I got mixed emotions with what he said because on one hand, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, he got a lot of nerves talking about, I don't know, it depends, I want to go where I'm wanted. Well, you got to produce to be wanted. And up until this year, we didn't see you do much. You got a lot of damn nerves having that kind of attitude. But the flip side is that since you're approaching the contract year and you're in a position to make things happen, it is kind of smart for him to sit there and use it as an opportunity to remind them that he could go elsewhere, show me some of that money.
That's
so
correct.
I can't knock him for that because he's manipulating it to a degree. Now, he got to show up these last two games now, especially since he's chirping like that. But I give him credit where credit is due. That's kind of funny that it's just like I'm sitting there saying Kirk Cousins sitting up here acting like I don't know. Like, you're the golden boy now that everybody's supposed to want you. You got a lot of nerves, but it's smart on his part. If he's trying to get his money, it's a good play. It's a smart play on his part.
As you know, D.C. can be a tough town on quarterbacks, and he has taken his beatings there after big games in which he has come up short. He has been known to throw big interceptions in big games, and yet after the one big win that he had, the comeback, I think, against the Eagles at home when he came out and yelled at the media, you like that, you like that. So he's got a little chip on his shoulder. Maybe he's a little bitter about how the way he's been mistreated in the past. And now it's time to put up or shut up. And if he puts up, he's going to be in a commanding position with that football team.
He's only thrown 3 interceptions in the last 8 games.
Yep, he's been really good.
All right, so we're all giving him props, but we're not sold yet. These next 2 games will tell us a lot. After 18 seasons of a surefire Hall of Fame career, Charles Woodson will retire at the end of this season. Woodson tied for 5th in NFL history with 65 interceptions and is tied for 1st all-time with 13 defensive touchdowns. Stephen A., what are your thoughts on Charles's career?
Well, I think he's one of the greats of all time. Being a corner, being a safety, going from being physically gifted to being cerebrally gifted as well. You can't say enough about his career. He's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer as far as I'm concerned. He's had an illustrious career. He's a former Defensive Player of the Year. He's a Super Bowl champion. And he's somebody that has been a leader in every locker room he's been a part of. And so when you look at it from that perspective, along with the fact that at that defensive position he has transcended the test of time, you just can't say enough about the job that he did. And then even this year, he's got 5 interceptions this year. He's got 65 for his career with 13 touchdowns. He's phenomenal. I wish him nothing but the best.
Yep, I'm with you on this one. I had the privilege of covering his Raiders team. Charles is the first go-round in Oakland, the one that got to the Super Bowl, got stomped by John Gruden's team. And trust me, his teammates on that Raiders first go-round team, they held him in awe. He is a football player who plays every game hard and keeps making plays, and he could make them at cornerback and then at safety, which is an amazing transition for a guy who, remember, he's still the only Heisman Trophy winner who was primarily a defensive football player. That is highly impressive. Way to go, Charles.
Stephen A., fantastic work on that interview again. Getting the access and all the work you did. We appreciate that. Shannon Sharp will be with us here tomorrow. We're looking forward to that. We also want to thank Will Smith, of course, for joining when Stephen A., and Ryan Clark for being with us. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Appreciate you all listening to the podcast. First Take weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern and the re-air at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2.
The College Football Playoff. Clemson, Oklahoma. Alabama, Michigan State.
You're not ready for the playoff. You might not have a pulse.
Coverage begins New Year's Eve at 3 Eastern on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.